A single tray clattered to the marble floor, silver cutlery, red wine spilling like blood across white linen. And in the center of the stunned ballroom stood a man in a tailored suit, his hand still gripping the waitress's wrist. "Careful," he said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Wouldn't want to strain that weak grip of yours." Laughter rippled through the guests, polite, poisonous. Cameras flashed. The man grinned wider, soaking in the attention. But the woman didn't smile. She just met his gaze, calm, unflinching, her voice low enough to cut through the noise. "Let go of my hand." The smirk on his face faltered for the briefest moment. Then he tightened his grip, leaning closer. "What's the matter? Can't handle a little strength?" A hush fell. Every phone lifted. And in that silence, her other hand shifted, subtle, precise, deliberate. No one saw what happened next. But seconds later, the same man who mocked her was kneeling on the floor, breath hitched in shock, pinned by a hold so controlled it looked like grace itself. This is Black Stories, where the pain of prejudice is told and justice always finds its voice. If you believe real power is control, not swagger, stick with this. In the next minutes, you'll watch a weak grip turn a room full of egos into a masterclass in restraint, expose a federation's bias, and crown dignity as the only belt that matters. Like this video and subscribe to Black Stories, because some victories don't roar, they breathe, center, and break the storm. The bus rocked like a cradle as the city blurred past midnight glass. Inside, Imani Rowe sat by the window, forehead against the cool pane, her waitress uniform still smelling faintly of bleach and coffee. In her hand, her only luxury, was a small paper cup of jasmine tea, steam curled upward, soft and patient. Like her, every night ended this way. A closing shift that bled into dawn, then a stop at St. Mercy Rehab, where the air always smelled of disinfectant and wilted roses. Her mother, once a vibrant nurse, now sat in a wheelchair near the window, humming old Yoruba hymns with a hand that trembled more than it used to. Imani always arrived quietly, setting her tips, singles and coins on the nightstand like a prayer. "Still fighting the world, my lion?" her mother would whisper with a tired smile. "Always," Imani would answer, and she meant it. By day, she moved through the world unnoticed. By night, her muscles still remembered the rhythm of a life she'd been forced to leave behind. Because once upon a time, Imani Rowe had been unstoppable. She was once a young girl in a crisp gi, barefoot on sun-warmed mats, her father's dojo echoing with the sound of discipline. "Focus," he'd said, voice like steady thunder. "Strength isn't anger, it's control." And she had listened. Every strike measured, every movement precise. By 16, she was a karate champion, undefeated across the state. Sponsors circled. Her name appeared in local papers under headlines like "The Lioness of Lawson County." Until the day that ended it all. Regional finals, a split-second win, and a biased referee who ruled against her for being too aggressive, the crowd roaring as her white opponent was crowned instead. She didn't cry until she got home. Her father told her to hold her head high, but the damage had already been done. The sponsorships vanished. The media stopped calling the dojo bills piled up until her family sold it off piece by piece. And when her father died 2 years later, she promised her mother one thing. She'd never fight again, not like that. Now she fights different battles. Overdue notices, disrespectful customers, the kind of invisible wars that never trend on social media. She lives in a one-room apartment with paper-thin walls and a window view of an alley, where she's learned the art of quiet listening. The shouts, the sirens, the stray cats' quarrels, all part of the city's heartbeat. But there's still a fighter inside her, coiled, patient. Every morning before work, she stretches on the cracked linoleum, running through old katas, slow and meditative, as if her body refuses to forget what her spirit once vowed never to use. And when she passes the neighborhood kids play sparring outside the convenience store, she always pauses, correcting a stance here, a guard there. They call her Coach Imani. Her world may have shrunk, but her dignity hasn't. She still moves with purpose. She still believes in balance. Because even when the world pretends not to see her, Imani Rowe sees herself. A woman forged in silence, a lioness in uniform, waiting for the day someone mistakes her calm for weakness again. And tonight, someone will. The Marble Lion wasn't just a restaurant. It was a kingdom. Gold chandeliers, crystal glassware that never saw fingerprints. A lobby so polished you could see your reflection, though Imani rarely looked. She already knew what she'd find. The invisible woman wearing a pressed black uniform and a practiced smile. Every shift began the same. "Smile wider, Imani," said Mr. Carver, the floor manager, his tone dripping honey but heavy with warning. "Yes, sir." "You know how our clients are. They prefer warmth, not attitude." "Yes, sir." It wasn't warmth they wanted. It was compliance. Inside the staff room, laughter cut through exhaustion as servers powdered their faces and fixed bow ties. Imani sat at her locker, rolling her wrists to ease the ache. The words "too aggressive" still echoed in her bones. Years later, still shaping how softly she spoke, how carefully she moved. When she stepped into the dining hall, it was like crossing a border. Guests straightened napkins but never met her eyes. A couple of men joked loudly about diversity hires. Someone snapped fingers instead of speaking. She moved like a shadow between them, quiet, efficient, untouchable. That was her armor. Halfway through lunch service, the CEO of a tech firm clicked his glass. "Miss, could you bring another bottle? This one's flat." "It's sparkling, sir," Imani replied gently. He chuckled to the table. "Ah, my mistake. I should have known you'd be the expert on bubbles." The table laughed. Imani smiled. The kind of smile that hides fire behind glass. At the corner station, another waitress, Hannah, blonde, new, whispered, "Don't take it personal. They just joke like that." Imani's voice was steady. "Funny how those jokes only go one direction." Hannah blinked. "You're brave for saying that." Bravery is what's left when quitting isn't an option. That night, the Marble Lion hosted a private dinner for investors of a new MMA gym franchise. It was all bravado and testosterone. The room smelled like ego and imported cologne. At the center of it all sat Evan Cade, the black belt everyone adored, his laugh loud enough to own the air. He'd made a fortune off viral motivational clips about discipline and humility, the kind that turned violence into branding. When Imani stepped up to refill his drink, he didn't move his hand. His fingers brushed hers deliberately, testing, taunting, a silent challenge. "Steady hands," he said, smirking. "But a weak grip, I bet, comes with the job." The table roared. Imani froze for half a heartbeat, her body remembering tournaments, trophies, referees who looked through her. "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe I just learned not to crush fragile things." A pause, just long enough for discomfort to ripple across the table. Evan's smirk twitched. "Careful. Jokes like that can get you fired." "Then I'll make it worth it." Her tone was light, but her eyes, steady, controlled, unapologetic. Later in the service corridor, Hannah cornered her, voice trembling. "You shouldn't talk back. They'll twist it. You'll lose everything." Imani straightened her vest. "I already lost everything once. This time I'll keep my dignity." Mirabelle, the general manager, overheard. "Imani," she hissed, "you are replaceable. Keep your head down and your mouth shut." Imani met her gaze. "I'm not asking to be seen, just not stepped on." By midnight, when the restaurant emptied into silence, she lingered to wipe the last table, eyes tracing the glass walls where her reflection looked strong, stronger than she felt. Outside, laughter still echoed from Evan's private suite. The staff whispered that he'd invited everyone to join him for a friendly after-party demonstration. Imani shook her head, grabbed her coat, and walked out into the rain. Each drop felt like applause from the universe. Soft, cold, steady. She didn't know it yet, but that same rain would fall again soon, under very different lights. And next time, no one would be laughing. The ballroom shimmered with laughter and light, the kind that costs thousands per minute. Champagne fizzed like celebration, and every ego in a tux thought itself immortal. Imani wove between tables, her tray balanced, her expression composed into the perfect professional mask. Inside, though, her pulse thudded steady as a drumbeat. She had heard enough of their jokes for one night, enough of the compliments about her smile, her tone, her body, enough of Evan Cade's effortless charm, the way he disguised condescension as banter. By the dessert course, the energy had shifted. The guests were loose from wine and applause. Evan leaned back in his chair, his black belt reputation practically glowing in the low light. A donor, a red-faced man with a watch worth more than Imani's yearly rent, laughed too loudly. "Evan," the donor drawled, "you've been bragging about that grip of yours all night. Why don't you give our lovely waitress a demonstration?" The laughter that followed wasn't friendly, it was hungry. Evan smirked, playing for his audience. "Ah, come on, Jerry. Don't make me embarrass the poor girl. Look at her, she's half my size." Imani froze mid-step, her fingers tightening around the tray. She'd heard that tone before, the one that turns women into props and men into performers. "I'm just doing my job, sir," she said quietly. But Jerry waved his napkin. "A little fun, sweetheart. He's a pro. He'll go easy." Phones rose, screens glowing like witnesses ready to feed the algorithm. Evan stood slowly, stretching his shoulders, every movement calculated. "All right then, let's show them how not to hurt someone." He winked at her like this was charity. "Come here, I promise I'll be gentle." Imani's breath caught. The crowd's laughter was thick enough to choke on. She could walk away, pretend she didn't hear. But the space between them had already become a stage, and she was trapped on it. "Please," she said softly, setting down her tray, "don't touch me." The words landed like a whisper against thunder. He grinned wider. "Relax, it's just a handshake. You afraid of a little pressure?" She turned to leave. His hand shot out. A flash of movement, skin on skin, his fingers clamped around her wrist. For a heartbeat, the room went utterly still. The kind of silence that hums before something breaks. Evan's grip was firm, controlled. He knew exactly how much strength to use without leaving a bruise. "See," he said to the watching crowd, "barely a squeeze." He looked down at her hand, his ego glowing like a spotlight. "Maybe you should train a little. You'd be amazed what the right teacher could." Her eyes lifted to his. Calm, steady, cold. The audience chuckled nervously, waiting for her to pull away, to blush, to fold. But she didn't. She just stared at him, long enough for a flicker of confusion to cross his face. Then another. Then fear, because his fingers had stopped moving. And no one in that room could explain why. The laughter faltered. Something in Imani's stillness, something ancient, made the air tighten like a pulled wire. Evan's grin wavered. He tried to yank his hand back. It didn't move. "What the—" His voice cracked under his breath. His wrist felt locked, twisted just enough to hint at pain, but not quite break it. Not yet. The guests leaned forward, phones trembling in their hands. To them, it still looked like a party trick. But Imani's eyes, they weren't playful. They were remembering. And then it hit her. Why his face felt familiar. The tournament, the arena lights, the referee's whistle slicing through her victory, the disqualification announced before the crowd's cheers even stopped. And this man, this same man, had been in the commentator's booth, laughing into his mic. The angry black girl can't take a loss, someone teach her humility. She had carried that sound for years. Now, that voice stood in front of her, older, smug, unaware that he was choking on the echo of his own words. Her voice came low, sharp as a whisper of steel. "Still think I can't take a loss?" Evan froze. The words slipped through his arrogance like a blade through silk. Gasps rippled across the crowd. One woman lowered her phone. Another whispered, "What did she just say?" Imani's tone didn't rise. It didn't need to. Her control was the spectacle. "You remember me?" she said quietly, her grip easing just enough for him to speak. His jaw twitched. You were—" "The angry black girl," she finished for him, voice trembling but sure. "The one you mocked on live TV." He opened his mouth, but she stepped closer, eyes locked to his. "That day, I lost everything. My name, my career, because men like you laughed while they erased me." She twisted his wrist an inch, not enough to harm, just enough to silence. Now the room wasn't laughing. Even the donor who'd started it looked pale. Evan tried to recover, forcing a smirk. It was years ago. I was joking." "You called it discipline," she said. "Funny how that word changes depending on who holds the power." The silence that followed was the kind that cameras couldn't edit out. The kind that lived forever online. Imani released his hand. Slowly, purposefully. He stumbled back a step, humiliated, not by injury but by exposure. Her voice, barely above a whisper, carried through the hush. "Don't mistake grace for weakness again." The donor's laughter died completely. The phones kept filming, every blink, every breath, immortalized. And for the first time that night, Evan Cade's name, the brand, the legend, looked small. Because across from him stood the woman he had erased. And this time, she wasn't backing down. The ballroom had gone dead silent. Every chandelier shimmered above an audience frozen between disbelief and anticipation. Wine glasses hovered mid-air. Every phone camera was live. Evan Cade, the man the world called the embodiment of control, stood grinning like a showman, microphone in hand. "All right, folks," he said, voice booming through the speakers. "Our waitress here wants to prove a point." A ripple of laughter. He spread his arms like a benevolent king. "Let's give her a little stage time, huh? I'll even go easy." The guests chuckled. Someone yelled, "Don't hurt her, Evan!" Imani stood center floor. No stance, no aggression. Her expression was unreadable, poised, almost serene. "You sure you want to do this?" she asked quietly. "I'm at work. I'm asking you to stop." He barked a laugh. "Oh, she talks tough now." He looked to the cameras. "This is what I love. Confidence before humility." He motioned to her. "Ladies first." She didn't move. Didn't blink. The silence stretched. He smirked. Fine, I'll start the lesson. A blur of motion. His leg whipped high in a flawless roundhouse kick. Whoosh! It sliced inches from her face, close enough to lift a strand of her hair. The crowd gasped, half thrilled, half horrified. She didn't flinch. He paced in a circle around her, smirk widening. Reflexes, not bad for a server. Maybe I should tip better. Another kick. She blocked. A jab. She redirected. Each move was calm, deliberate, defensive mastery. Evan grinned wider, thinking it was still his show. He exaggerated his strikes now, throwing combinations, mugging for the cameras, turning the moment into performance. See that control? He called to the crowd between attacks. That's why I'm... He didn't finish. Because she moved. Not fast. Right. A half step forward, timing so precise it cut through his rhythm like a blade through glass. He swung again. She caught his wrist. Pivoted. His balance shifted. He tried to recover, but she swept. It wasn't brute force. It was geometry, flow. Years of quiet repetition turned to instinct. He hit the ground, hard, rolled, popped up with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Lucky move, he said, laughter shaky. She said nothing. The crowd laughed nervously, phones shaking in their hands. He lunged again, faster now, less control, a storm of punches, his composure fracturing. Her blocks became smaller, sharper, economical. One redirect, one sidestep, a subtle pivot. And suddenly his body betrayed him again. He hit the floor harder this time. No laughter now, just the echo of impact and the hum of 100 cameras capturing history. Evan's pride shattered faster than his stance. He rose, furious, chest heaving. He charged recklessly. She waited. The moment his arm extended, she slipped inside his reach, redirected the force, locked his wrist, and leaned close, her breath steady against his ear. Still think my grip's weak? He froze, because he could feel it, the control, the restraint. She could have dislocated his shoulder, but didn't. Then she let go. He staggered back, chest rising and falling like a man just realizing the ground beneath him was never his. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. Then a single clap, soft, awkward. Another joined, then another. Until applause filled the hall. Not polite, not performative, but stunned. Evan sank to one knee, pride bleeding through silence. Imani didn't smile, didn't bow. She just turned, fixed her apron, and walked off the floor. Her dignity wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Because in that moment, the whole world saw the truth. He wasn't defeated by her strength. He was dismantled by her calm. And that's what went viral. The waitress who never raised her voice, yet silenced an entire room. It started as a clip, 17 seconds long. No sound, just gasps, the thud of impact, and a black woman walking away while a man in a suit stared at the floor. Caption: Waitress floors black belt. By morning, it had 20 million views. By noon, it was everywhere. Sports anchors replayed it frame by frame. She redirects his momentum here. See that balance? She's clearly trained. That's textbook Shotokan precision. Clean hips, clean lines. But beneath the technical commentary came the moral one. Old interviews resurfaced. Clips of Evan Cade calling a young black fighter emotional. A panel discussion from years ago. His smirk as he said, "Some people just don't have the temperament for discipline." the internet remembered, and receipts came fast. Number sign Grip of Grace trended first, then number sign Still Think It's Weak. Commentators debated ego, privilege, and restraint. A veteran coach wrote, "That woman didn't defeat him with muscle. She dismantled his arrogance with control." And then came the unraveling. Sponsors pulled out. Brands that had plastered his image across fitness magazines released statements. "We stand for inclusion and accountability. Effective immediately, we're suspending all partnerships with Mr. Cade." Several cited their athlete conduct clause after reviewing resurfaced clips. The National Combat Arts Federation issued a hasty press release. "We are reviewing prior incidents involving bias and disciplinary discrepancies." Translation: They were running scared. Reporters dug deeper. Patterns emerged. Black and brown athletes passed over for promotion. Female fighters penalized for aggression. Evan Cade's name showed up again and again, always on the winning side of the same narrative. And in the middle of the storm, someone found her. Imani Rowe, 31 years old, former junior national champion, disqualified a decade ago for unsportsmanlike conduct, a ruling that had quietly erased her from the sport she loved. Journalists reached out. She refused interviews at first, until one network offered a conversation, not a spectacle. The segment aired live, a modest studio. She wore her Waitress uniform, not a GI. Her voice trembled, but her conviction didn't. "I didn't want to fight," she said softly. "I wanted respect. The same kind I gave, the kind I was never given." The host leaned in. "What would you say to those who say you embarrassed a martial artist on live camera?" Imani met the lens, eyes steady. "Respect isn't about who hits harder," she said. "It's about who stays centered when the world tries to unbalance you. Respect is the highest form of power." The clip went viral again. Not for the fight this time, but for the stillness that followed it. Because the world had just witnessed what strength truly looked like. And for once, everyone saw it clearly. Evan Cade sat in the back of a studio, watching his own downfall unfold on live television. The chyron beneath the anchor read, "Federation under fire for racial bias." Next to it, the frozen image that ended his career. Him, mid-lunge, his wrist trapped in Imani Rowe's calm, precise hand. A decade of arrogance gone viral. He muted the sound, but her voice still played in his head. Respect is the highest form of power. He'd spent his life chasing the opposite. Outside, protesters gathered in front of the Federation headquarters, signs raised high. Discipline beats domination. Justice for Imani Rowe. Teach character, not ego. And inside that building, a new press conference was about to begin. Imani stood at the podium. Not in uniform, not in black tie attire, just herself. A simple blazer, hair pulled back, posture steady. The same poise she had in the ring, now facing a different kind of crowd. Camera flashes flickered like lightning, but she didn't blink. "I spent years cleaning floors I once trained on," she said. Her voice carried through the room. "But I never stopped practicing, because discipline doesn't depend on who's watching. It's who you are when no one sees you." Reporters scribbled, lenses zoomed. Her words rippled through every corner of the room. "The truth is," she continued, "I didn't beat a black belt. I just reminded him, and maybe all of us, what martial arts was supposed to be about. Respect. Not dominance, not showmanship, but respect." A long pause, the kind that makes even cynics sit still. Then the Federation's director stepped forward. Voice firm. Public. Recorded. Effective immediately. All disciplinary records based on subjective bias are under review. Ms. Rowe, your title is reinstated, and your name restored." Applause thundered through the hall. But Imani didn't smile in triumph. She nodded in quiet acceptance, because her victory wasn't about reclaiming what was lost. It was about changing what would never be lost again. Within weeks, the board invited her to co-lead a new initiative. The Rowe Code of Ethics, a global reform program teaching emotional control, inclusion, and cultural humility to martial arts instructors worldwide. Clips of her teaching went viral again. Not the fight this time, but the stillness between her movements. The way she said, "Power is nothing without principle." Even Evan Cade showed up once, anonymously, to watch from the crowd. He didn't ask for forgiveness. But when she bowed at the end of class, he bowed too, silently acknowledging what words couldn't. By the end of the year, her life had come full circle. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was undeniable. And for every person who once called her the angry black girl, there were thousands now calling her something else. The calm that broke the storm. In the end, it wasn't a viral fight that changed the world. It was a woman who refused to swing when she could have struck. Imani didn't win with strength. She won with center. In a room built on arrogance and applause, she reminded everyone that real power isn't loud. It's precise. Controlled, rooted in dignity. The footage that once made the world laugh now played in classrooms and dojos as a lesson in restraint. Proof that character always outlasts reputation. Because when the noise fades, the truth remains. Anyone can fight. Few can teach. And fewer still can walk away knowing they already won. This is Black Stories, where strength isn't proven by how hard you hit, but by how deeply you stand in your truth. If you believe power means principle, if you believe dignity always deserves a voice, like this video, share it and subscribe, because sometimes the loudest victories come from the quietest hands. And when the